The food's burnt. Yeah.
So we were busy talking about the fire and rebuilding after the fire, and I don't know if there's still something about that you'd like to mention.
Yeah, so it really was a process that started with the milk tanker, and because everybody was so supportive, we were able to believe that we could do it, and so we continued to build on it, and it took 2 months before we were in a position to start breaking down and clearing up the place. And so we literally started rebuilding a year ago this month, August. And we should be, if it wasn't for COVID, we'd be just about finished.
Yeah.
But COVID has delayed us 3 to 4 months, so we're hoping we'll be finished by the end of the year.
Yeah. But I saw the progress that you guys have made in the factory, and it's astronomical.
Yeah, and when you think it's 12 months that we've been building. The last bit of fire damage we will break out in the next 2 weeks. So there's still a bit more that's to be demolished. So, because we had so much support and because things worked, we could consider keeping going.
Yeah.
So by the time the insurance was finally settled, which, as I say, was in a record time, we had great confidence that we could rebuild and have a bigger, better Orange Grove.
Yeah.
And so we've now built a business that is way more versatile and way more efficient than the previous one, because you can imagine if we'd been building on the same premises from 1932 to 2019, then there were bits of add-on and adjustments and alterations, and somewhere in the middle was the original milking parlour, which survived the fire, by the way.
Wow.
Where we took that photograph.
Yeah.
Upstairs, straight below that was the original milking parlour.
Oh, that's very interesting.
And it's still there.
I could definitely include that in my...
that same room where I showed you the pasteurizers are.
Yeah.
That room was the original factory.
Oh, wow.
So from 1932, and the buildings that my grandfather built, they were there. Yeah.
Sure. And they still survived.
Yeah, all the buildings I built did.
Yeah. My next question, you basically answered already, but if there's something you still want to mention about that, then you can. How did the community respond to the catastrophe, and how were they supportive?
We had unbelievable support. I already mentioned the dairy industry as a whole gave us the ability to survive. The community support was phenomenal, and to give you kind of examples, we sponsored the Sorrel Cilliers rugby tournament, and we took over from the previous sponsors because they needed a bit more support, and the school offered to pay back the sponsorship.
Wow.
Which was,
So we're getting wienervleis.
Then I think it was one of the junior primary school, the children offered to collect their pocket money and give it to Orange Grove.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's phenomenal. It shows you that if you have a good impact on the community and if you need them, they will be there for you.
Well, I like to believe that people are basically really supportive and good, especially in South Africa.
Yeah.
This whole Ubuntu thing is real.
Yeah.
And we certainly experienced it.
Yeah.
There's no way that Orange Grove would be here now if it wasn't for the support that South Africa gave us.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal. Yeah.
That's amazing. And you touched on this as well, but if you'd like to add more on how the pandemic impacted Orange Grove, you can add more to that as well.
Well, the pandemic has impacted all business in South Africa, all people in South Africa. We are very, very fortunate in that we run a food business, and so we could continue with the pandemic.
Yeah.
had we not been trying to build at the same time, we would have been challenged by the pandemic, and as you experience now with one of our key staff members, suddenly he's off into isolation, his family's into isolation, and so on. So it has impacted all of us. Where it impacted Orange Grove differently to what it would have been if we hadn't had the fire is the fact that the pandemic, even though we managed to keep building during the lockdown period, we actually laid something like 300,000 bricks during that time. But we couldn't keep going because you couldn't get concrete, you couldn't get reinforcing, you couldn't get doors, windows, all the stuff that we needed. So slowly everything we kept building what we could. But effectively I would say we lost 3-4 months on our rebuild program.
That's a lot.
There are areas that we could keep going with, and they would have been ahead. But overall, we were going to be 3-4 months behind. And the impact of that means we can't leave Howick until we'll leave sometime in September, whereas we were hoping to have been out by May. The pandemic also, with the recession and the setback in the economy, also meant that we shelved any plan that we might have had to have a second factory in Howick, because we were seriously considering using that plant. But that, together with some of the business that we lost, and the fact that the economy is going to be a serious challenge for the next few years, as a result of the pandemic and the recession, meant we chose to rather focus on Dundee than to look at other options.
And this is where you are. Your house is right next to the factory. That's actually another question. Why did you choose to have your house right next to the factory?
No, hang on a second. That was not me. When I was born, my folks were living in the little cottage next to this house. My grandparents actually built this house in 1941. Okay, and they built the dairy. Well, they bought the farm and they built the dairy next door in 1932. So I only joined the business in 1979. I had nothing to do with the fact that the house is sitting next to it.
Okay, now then I understand.
If I could, I would have had the dairy, on the farm, but a kilometre away would have been good. But this house has been it's been our family home my whole life. In fact, I've lived. I always joke. I lived a year in the house next door, and then I lived the rest of my life, except for when I was at university, I was living on one side of a wall to the other side of the wall, so I moved that far. And now my plan is to move to the third floor on top of the same room. So I will just move.
So you're just moving around the same house.
Now
I scrolled here by accident. Okay, I understand that Orange Grove still reached out to people during the pandemic to help as many people in the community as they could, and alongside with some significant leaders in the community as well. What did you guys do, and how did you try to help the community while trying to get yourself back onto your feet again?
Well, I think the first thing to remember is that we were more fortunate than most through this pandemic because we could at least carry on with our business. And so what we've done is we looked at different protocols, and we early on decided that this pandemic was going to be around for, we talk about October 2021 is what we're planning for.
Really?
So from the start, we never planned for a month. We had in our mind that whatever we did had to be sustainable for 18 months.
Sure.
And so whatever processes and procedures and protocols we put in place needed to be done for that length of time. And so it sort of makes it a much more focused what you do. So if you want people to wash their hands every time, you're not going to go and give them a bottle of sanitizer if you can put dispensers and do it properly.
Yeah.
You're going to do 18 months, it's going to be a mission.
Yeah.
So the same thing, we also realized that the community was going to end up losing a lot of jobs, and we got together with the His Royal Highness King
Goodwill.
King Goodwill Zwelithini, and together with Dr. Buthelezi, and they supported us, and we've come up with a mask that we branded. It's one of our brands, but we put redone the label so that it cannot be sold, and we donate. We're donating together with our farmers. We're donating 5,000 liters of masks a week.
That's amazing.
To the various communities.
Yeah, what's so interesting for me about the project that I'm doing is I'm here with you now, the person and the owner of the company who is doing these things. And the other day I was just in the location with one of the Gorgos there who's using your product to cook for the kids.
Yeah. And so now the other thing that we do is we said we need to support our staff and their families, and through that their communities. So we issue all our staff with the normal masks and things like that, but we also said we'll give them masks because it's a very good probiotic in that it helps stimulate your immune system. It doesn't give you immunity, but it helps the live bacteria help stimulate. So all our staff, we also give them masks, and we give every staff member 5 multivitamins a day.
Oh, really? Sure.
1 for them and 4 for their family.
Sure.
And so we made a commitment to do that for the first 3-4 months, and it's one of those things we will probably keep going for a good while. With the Mars project, our daughter Karen is trying to see if she can do crowdfunding. She's overseas, and that will help us to broaden that project. And with a bit of luck, otherwise, it might come to an end.
So you've gone all the way to working with the IFP and the royal family and everyone in the community to try and help as many people as possible.
Yeah, we see. I wouldn't say we're working with the IFP as such.
Oh, is it not?
Yeah. What we're working with is 2 of the most respected leaders in the. Dr. Buthelezi is retired from politics per se.
Oh, okay.
He's a member of parliament, but he and the king are the 2 recognized leaders of the majority of the people in KZN.
Yeah.
And they've supported us, and they identify where we should be, where the most needy are.
Yeah.
And so we will support Dundee. We always supported Dundee and surrounding area, but to go out, we've asked them to work with us, and they're identifying where we should do this.
Yeah.
And their name appears on the product.
Yeah. That's very nice. And then, is there anything else, because I'm going to move away from this a little bit, is there anything else that you'd like to mention, some of the things that you've done in the past, even prior to the pandemic, and some of the other things that you might have done now? If there's something you'd like to add to that, you can do now.
I think one of the most fun and relevant supports that we did to the community was we worked together with the Dundee Crisis Centre, and with you're treating me so hot. tech and you've got an old phone.
Well, it's not that old, but it is like, I think it's 2018 or 2017. So this is an extra. My personal phone is my previous phone, because I don't want to get a phone call while I'm busy recording the interview. Okay, the first question: could you give me a short introduction of yourself and Orange Grove, and maybe where you came from and how you got to where you are now?
Orange Grove is a family-run business. My grandparents started Orange Grove in 1927 in town, in their uncle's backyard. The name came from the fact that the original dairy was about a 20 square meter building in the orchard of their uncle's backyard, and so it was an orange orchard, and that's where they called Orange Grove Dairy. My father joined his parents while they moved out to the farm here at Clinton in 1932 after 5 years, and can you bring that apple and stuff?
I'm bringing some water, you said.
Apple and water, yeah. Sorry. So my grandparents moved out to this farm, Clinton, where Orange Grove Dairy is, in 1932, and my father joined them when he left school. He joined full time, and he was working during school. He used to milk before going to school, milk when he came back from school. And they delivered the milk in cans to the various houses in Dundee. And they started with 7 Jersey cows. And our basis of Orange Grove Dairy milk has been Jersey milk ever since. So on the one side, the Jersey herd became known as Clinton Jerseys, and is one of South Africa's biggest stud Jersey herds.
Oh wow!
And my brother Pete took over running the Jersey herd in 1993, 94.
Yeah.
And he's still running it to this day. So he's now milking somewhere in the region of 2,000 cows in 2 separate herds.
Yeah, but he's not the only supplier for dairy for Orange Grove.
No, Orange Grove has grown now. We have around about 37 dairy farms that supply Orange Grove from northern KZN and as far south as Underberg, Boston.
Oh wow!
Where we collect the milk and we bring it to Dundee. So Orange Grove Dairy, when my dad joined, it was in those days they used to supply just Dundee, and there were a number of dairies that supplied Dundee. So they were very small. You can imagine 7 cows.
Yeah.
Maybe they grew by the time Orange Grove Dairy was 21. So that was in 1948. They marched all the cows from the farm through Dundee in a procession celebrating their 21st birthday. So all the cows walked from the farm here through town and back again. And then we got pictures of this procession to celebrate 21 years of Orange Grove Dairy. In the process, they amalgamated in the early 40s, 1940s. They amalgamated with other dairies in Dundee, and the dairy became known as Dundee United Dairy. And then my grandparents slowly bought out the other shareholders, and then reverted back to Orange Grove Dairy, and it stayed Orange Grove ever since.
Oh wow!
I joined my father when I left university, and basically when I left army, but I'd worked on the farm while I was at university, and then I joined full time when I left army in 1979, and been running the dairy. Shortly thereafter, I started running the dairy. Dad ran the cows and the agriculture, and my brothers joined, I ended up running the milking side and the packing and distribution. My two brothers ran the beef and agriculture, and slowly we grew. And then in 1993, my brother Pete took over running the milking herd, and he's been running it ever since.
Sure.
In 1997, we split up the business. So the farms are in a trust, and we split up the business. So each of us brothers ran our own businesses, and I ended up running Orange Grove Dairy solely. So it's really now my family's business.
Yeah.
And so we've grown steadily from being one of many dairies supplying Dundee to a dairy supplying northern Natal. We moved into Glencoe in the 70s, and it was a big move out of Dundee to Glencoe, and then slowly we moved into the surrounding area. We went into Madadeni in the 80s and Newcastle, and we opened our first depot in Mpangeni in 1993. We opened a depot in Durham in 2002, and we opened a depot in Johannesburg in about 2006. And we increased the range of our products from original milk and cream to milk, cream, mass, and then juices. We added yogurts, and we've added amaheo, which is a maize-based drink, and we now also do long life products. And so that's the basic history of Orange Grove.
Yeah. And I think we can probably touch on your position in Parliament that you used to have and what that entailed quickly.
In 1994, with the first democratic elections, if you like, in South Africa, I was involved with politics. We'd always been involved at each election. My wife Sue and I got involved, and we worked for the DP in the elections. And then I was asked, when the IFP joined into the elections at the last minute, I was asked to work with the IFP, and I'd always said that I would be, if the IFP joined, I would work with the IFP, and they joined. And I joined the IFP and the election process because I felt it was an opportunity to contribute to the change in South Africa, to get to know all the new role players, or the role players as we came together in Parliament. And I was fortunate enough to be elected into KwaZulu-Natal's legislature, and I was there for, unfortunately, for 2.5-3 years, until I had to resign because it became a choice between running the business and standing for Parliament. Initially, when I was asked, I was told Parliament would involve about 3 months of the year, and I felt that I could make a difference and contribute. And it was really challenging and really enjoyable, and I like to think I helped make a difference during that time. But unfortunately, at the end of the day, it had to come to a choice between Parliament or the family business.
Yeah.
And I would have been letting down the whole family if I'd just walked away from Orange Grove Dairy.
Yeah.
So I reluctantly then gave up being a member of Parliament. I stayed involved with politics until about 2006, the local government elections, and from there on I've worked with the guys, but I haven't been actively involved.
Yeah. Okay. And then something a little bit off topic. Am I correct to say that Orange Grove is one of the biggest employer in Dundee?
We are probably one of the biggest. I don't know the figures for other companies, but you must also remember that Orange Grove Dairy might be one of the biggest employers, in Dundee, but not all our employees are based in Dundee
Yeah.
or work in Dundee. So the people that work in the factory, in the dairy, the people that work on local distribution, all the tanker drivers, all the administration, and the long distance, the guys that take the stock to the depots,
Yeah.
work in Dundee or out of Dundee. There's a depot in Pongeni, there's a depot in Johannesburg, there's a depot in Durban. We run a depot together with an agent in Kokstad and another one in Mpumalanga in White River. All of those depots have merchandisers, have drivers, distributing staff, management,
Yeah.
and so on. So on paper we might be the biggest in Dundee, but I don't think that we employ the most number of people in Dundee because
I
of the
understand.
fact that they're scattered elsewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense. And then you had a big fire recently in last year, March, I think, and the process of recovering and to preserve as many personnel as you possibly could. What was that like, and how did it affect your business, and how are you guys restructuring?
The fire was pretty devastating. It wrote off about 90% of all the business, and so about 18,000 out of the 20,000 square meters under roof was burnt.
Yeah.
The fire started at 12:30, and by 3:30, 4:30 in the morning, 3-4 hours later, it was effectively all over. Obviously there was the option of doing nothing,
Yeah.
and but given the fact that we are in a highly perishable product, what really triggered us to do something was round about 3:30 in the morning, one of our tanker drivers drove past going to fetch milk. He was going to fetch milk, it was his job to fetch milk, and it kind of like focused our attention on the fact that there's life after this fire.
Yeah.
Whether we liked the life or not, there was still going to be all the milk coming from the farmers.
Yeah.
And so we had our first management meeting, 4:30 in the morning. We allocated jobs to everyone, and by 7 in the morning we had managed to sell all the milk that we were due to collect that day, plus all the milk that we already had from Sunday in the silos.
Yeah.
And we had also had an offer by then we probably had an offer from 7 dairies to help us out.
Sure. To help you out of distribution and
They
collecting
just
the-
offered to help, whatever it could be.
Yeah.
And in the end, we that same afternoon we were in Howick looking to see if we could rent the premises in Howick from the bank, because that dairy had gone into liquidation, and we secured that. And by that, the next morning we had labels that had been printed for our. So within 24 hours, we were packing at various dairies around the country.
That's amazing.
And at its peak, we were packing milk and mass and yogurt and juices in 12 different dairies in South Africa. Cape Town, East London, Howick, Harrismith, Johannesburg, Limpopo, Polokwane, Bloemfontein.
Yeah.
All those places we had dairies that were packing for us, and we got a lot of support from our customers. And so in trying to deal with the surplus milk that we would have not had a market for, we eventually put together that we could supply our customers, and we did our best not to retrench any staff. So all our marketing and distribution the depots, they all were retained. And then we went on to short time, and all the casual staff that we had, we went through a selection process, and so there was retrenchments.
Yeah, in a catastrophe like that, usually there are many more.
Yeah, I would say we retrenched maybe in the end 15-20% of our staff,
Yeah,
which was pretty good considering that we lost 90% of our business.
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
This is not one of the questions, but would you mind if I, in my statement, if I mentioned that you had the choice of, you could have let it go and lived a good life with your family and let everyone, let the business, perish, or you could have built it up and carry on as you did. If you don't want me to mention that part, then I can leave it out.
It's always a choice. You can, if you're insured, and you
Yeah.
must remember, with insurance, you don't know that you're insured until the insurance company admits liability.
Yeah,
So for the first month, we weren't sure whether we were insured. We were pretty confident, but until the insurance company admits liability, you don't know whether you're in for a fight or not.
yeah,
And the insurance company, Bright Insurance, it's BRYTE Insurance, and our broker, Caledonian, were unbelievable. They supported us. Once we established that they were, once they admitted liability, they backed us all the way.
yeah,
And I think it was pretty unprecedented, but we reached settlement within 6 months of the fire.
yeah,
And so to start with, you don't really have a lot of choice.
yeah,
You say, well, yeah, let's just give up, but you can't, because there's all the milk and there's lots of things you have to sort out anyway.
yeah. But that could have been someone else's problem.
Yeah, maybe you just walk away.
Yeah,
But then you're leaving your destiny in someone else's hands.
yeah.
So
Sorry, do you want to speak to everyone before he goes?
Ibrahim, can we stop there
Yeah,
a second?
we can stop. We're talking about the more fun project.
Yeah, so what we did was we started donating with a small donation of cash to the crisis center, and then we were donating some of our short code product to Mayena Mission, and then the demand got so high that the mission, it started disrupting their business, and so Carol Bradley took it over at the crisis center, and we eventually, she came up with a plan that said she will donate to the community, but the community should be the needy, and also they must bring rubbish. So they brought plastic and cardboard waste, and in return for that she gave them some of our short code product, and so they got, say, a 4 kg of mass or yogurt or juice or something in return for a bag of plastic or cardboard or paper. And then she sold that on to the waste removers, and then used that money to help the crisis center.
Yeah,
And so that was like clean up the Dundee area, fund the crisis center, and we used our short code product.
yeah,
So then another project that Sue came up with just to support that was we changed our date codes on to put a date so that 3 days before the product was due to reach its expiry date, we brought it back. So we had a separate secret date on the product that we could bring the stock back and issue it. And so that just meant that the stuff didn't get wasted.
yeah,
And so that was quite a fun project.
Yeah.
But I mean, there've been lots of little things. Some of them sponsorships, supporting some of the sports people in Dundee, some of
Yeah.
the singing groups,
Yeah.
to get somewhere.
Yeah.
It's great.
No, it is great. And then after that, could you tell me a bit about the Can Do team? My dad mentioned I should ask you about that.
Okay, the Can Do team really came about from the first talk that I gave our staff the day of the fire and the day after the fire. You can imagine everybody, there was no work, and I mean everyone is in tears and shell shocked and so on. And I said to the guys, look guys, we can do this. We can do it. And therefore we said, but anybody who wants to join us, join the Can Do team. So it's a Can Do team. And then our daughter made a plaque and with a sign underneath it, the Can Do team, and that was present at all our meetings, and so we now do the Can Do team.
Yeah.
And I mean, one of the things we'd like to do, I don't know if you can really announce it at this stage because it's not. If you go driving into town on the right hand side before the flats,
Yeah.
your dad had that Christian display.
Yeah. Yeah. Where my uncle and them had it by the
Yes.
the
So below that, before the flats, was all the dongas and everything else.
yeah.
What we did is we went to the municipality and said, look, we are busy pulling out rubble and everything else from the dairy. We can use it to fill up the dongas here, or we can go and fill up the dongas there, and when we finish, level it all off, and it'll be a place that people, it'll be a park
Yeah.
instead of dongas, and that's what we're busy doing.
Yeah.
And we're hoping that it'll be called the Orange Grove Can Do Park.
That'll be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then we bought. We were concerned about. The fact that a lot of people were not going to have jobs, and we needed to find a way to support them, but we couldn't be sure we'd support them. So we came up with the idea to buy a small farm just outside Dundee. It's neighbours to you guys.
Yeah.
And set up what we're now calling the Can Do Training Academy.
Oh. So there you're training some people.
Well, the idea is we'll train farming
Yeah.
for the community, and we'll grow food and stuff. That was our plan.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the transfer took a lot longer than we thought, and so it only went through after 6-7 months.
Yeah.
And by that stage, we got tied up with Howick, and
Yeah.
but so our training academy is going to be called the Can Do Training Academy,
Sure.
based on that farm. Yeah.
Yeah. And then this is, you mentioned that you don't want to answer any personal stuff, so I'm going to ask you the question. If you want to skip over it, you just say you want to skip over it. Could you tell me about your family's involvement in the old age home, Colley Street, Kendall Court, and some other housing projects?
I think our family have always been involved in building different things in Dundee. So, early days, my grandfather and father built a lot of the show stalls, where the cattle stalls and the showgrounds. In fact, it's sitting in the dairy in the shed above the workshop are all the concrete molds for the buildings down there.
Yeah.
And then so they built that, and then Dad was involved with Eventide, and he built he built flats and blocks of flats and stuff in town, and the Kendall Court was a double-story building that my father bought, and they converted to flats, and they built bachelor flats there as well, and those masonettes.
Yeah.
And then Dad and Mom donated that to Eventide
Yeah.
on the basis that people could, Eventide could rent them out or sell them. The same like your dad's done the other project for Eventide Muse.
Yeah.
Me and a mission, Dad was, and Mom and Dad, when they needed money to start the mission, they funded that.
Yeah.
And then, the Tulana Museum, I mean, that's the Smith family.
Yeah.
So from way back, our family's part of the Smith family.
Yeah.
And when that little cottage out there needed to be restored, my brother Mike's first job when he left varsity was to go and restore that cottage.
Yeah.
And we've supported the museum. It's not that we made it happen.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people like Pam and Sheila Henderson and that made
I'm
it.
photographing Pam on Sunday,
Yeah.
actually.
We just supported their efforts. So it's
Yeah.
not, so we don't, as a family, we haven't really, made a noise about what we've done.
Yeah.
So only use it if it helps you to score more brownie points.
Yeah.
But if you don't need it, then it's
Yeah.
okay. Rather talk about what Orange Grove can do.
Okay.
Then it's Orange Grove doing it.
Yeah. I will try and focus
Yeah.
on that. And then, okay, the Lana Museum, that was the next question. And are you optimistic about the future, and what role do you think the next generation and obviously Orange Grove in the future will play to ensure a prosperous future for our community and South Africa?
Well, why should we not be optimistic? We've got a beautiful country. We've got great people. We survived the Dutch, the Boers, the Brits, now we will get through the ANC and the corruption and whatever. As a country, the people of South Africa are way more resilient than the politicians.
Yeah.
We've got a great country.
Yeah.
We've got great people. We've got resources. Why should we not be positive?
Yeah.
And so, you're the one that should answer. What are you going to do? I mean, we'll support you.
No, that's wonderful to hear.
And so, anyone who says you want to go somewhere else in the world, well, you can go there. You'll find that they got their challenges. And I think there are awesome opportunities in South Africa.
No, I agree.
So we just go for them.
I 100% agree.
There's a saying that says that if you look for the positive, you'll find the positive. If you look for the negative, you'll find the negative. So you might as well wake up every morning, as my mother-in-law says. You wake up in the morning, you decide what kind of day you're going to have and go and live it. Don't let other people determine that for you. And if you decide to be positive, you'll have a good, positive day.
Yeah. And then I have two more questions that I've asked everyone, and I want to get your take on it as well. How would you define good leadership? Is the first question.
I would say inclusive, but definitive. Caring, but hard on principles. And any good leader should have strong morals.
Yeah.
You must have a good moral fiber. People must be able to trust you.
Yeah, rigid values.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the last one is, how would you advise someone else, anyone in any position? Some people might say, I don't have the resources, but how would you advise anyone to help to build a better future? What can anyone do?
I think you must dream. And your dream must be not a selfish dream, but if you don't dream for yourself, you won't be motivated.
Yeah.
So you dream for yourself where you want to go, and then you start building for that dream. You start working towards that dream, and never stand on other people to get there, because there's no need to. You just got to drive for yourself and include people along the way, and you will get there. But without a dream, you can't get there.
Yeah.
And you must always remember, it's better to aim for the stars and hit the post
Yeah.
than to aim for the post and hit the ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a question out of myself that I asked your wife as well. I think it's a very controversial question. When will you retire?
Well, my first retirement was supposed to be when I was 40,
Yeah.
and I became a member of parliament instead,
Yeah.
and that didn't work out so well. So my next retirement was going to be once I'd finished, once we'd finished doing the dairy, and we finished 2 weeks, and then the place burned down. So that didn't work out so well.
Yeah.
So my next retirement will be when we have got Orange Grove back on track, and I've done what I can help to get it to where it would have been, where it was just before the fire.
Yeah.
Good customer base, profitable, part of the community, and people who care and matter, have a good job and prospects, and then I can retire. And how long will that be? I think the fire probably delayed everything 2 to 3 years. Now we're 18 months, so 18 months time should be retirement time.
For some reason, I think you're a bit like my family and you're never going to retire fully.
Yeah,
at
but
least.
everybody says that. You know, the real thing is retirement's not retirement.
Yeah.
Retirement doesn't mean you go and you sit on the stoop and you watch the day go by.
Yeah.
Retirement means you change what you do.
Yeah.
I mean, for the one part, I've changed quite a lot of things, what I've done. So I've had a really good life with different things. But also, even the fire. I mean, it's not what you'd wish for, but we've had a good, challenging time. So that's part of retirement. We retired the old business and we got a new one.
Don't quote me on this, I could be completely wrong. Do you know Lawrence Hodson? They own Thirsty Water and some of the... So if I'm not mistaken, I think he started that business with the timber when he was in his 60s. And now they are, I think, the biggest private suppliers in the country. Or in the southern hemisphere, something like that, something crazy.
I don't know, but Thirsty's has done very well and it's been going not very long.
Yeah, and that's just a small side business.
Yeah, because their main business is timber.
Yeah.
Do you know where I first met the Hodsons?
No.
There were two Hodson brothers and their family. This is where their family timber farm and everything comes from, down in Harding.
Yeah.
They ran I think it was Harding. What's the other place down there? But they ran a dairy down there. Bruce Hodson and his brother Rob ran a farm and timber and the family, and one of them was a dairy farm.
Yeah.
And I think it was Manor Dairy.
I have no idea.
Down there. And so Lawrence is one of the brothers, and he's brother or cousin, and I think they moved into Northern Natal with the timber. And then they bought, I think it's a Pato's farm that they bought.
But Lawrence is the father, and I think he started it all, I think, and then Rob Hodson is his son.
And Rob Hodson is either his uncle, it's not his father, so it must be his uncle or a second cousin.
Oh, okay, Rob. So then he was named after his...
Rob and Bruce Hodson were the guys. They probably my age or a little bit older.
Okay,
so
yeah. Wow. I think that's it about our interview. If there's something else you want to add, then you can add it.
If there's something you want to ask, you can phone and ask.
I think that's it. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.